Good afternoon, everybody. We are at DMEXCO on the M&M Global video studio. We're here and we're about to interview Damian Blackden, who is the new Chief Strategy Officer at Maxus. The last time I saw you, Damian, was in our C-Squared Towers back in Suffolk, London, and a few weeks later you joined Maxus. So how's it been in the few months you've been there so far?
Yeah, it's good. I've been finding my way around through it and so on, and it's always an interesting kind of juxtaposition from doing the startup thing, which is what I was doing when we saw each other, through to here, and it's being back and part of an agency network. It's good.
Yeah, and particularly an agency network such as Maxus as well, which is that almost in a way, I suppose, there's similarities. It's got that kind of startup entrepreneurial kind of ethos to it, hasn't it, as an agency?
Yeah, I think you're right. I only realised afterwards why they brought me in. I think it was because a lot of the people are very entrepreneurial, they're very resourceful. The agency, because it's quite lean in terms of the structure, quite flexible. It moves probably faster than a lot of the other networks, and there's a lot of similarities, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's been your kind of first role as you've you've bedded yourself into the company? What are you hoping to achieve over the kind of next year? Have you got a kind of blueprint as to what success looks like for Damian and for Maxus?
Yeah, I came out with some stuff quite quickly, and we're adjusting it. But broadly, we've been the fastest growing network for the last 5 years. We have to put in place all of the things to keep that growth going. We can't carry on doing the same things. That means adjusting our structure. It means broadening out with the kind of clients that we might be working with. It means ensuring that our current client base has got all of the technology that's required in order to future-proof them. And it means partnering with some companies in the sort of maybe things like the sales tech business, as well as the ad tech and the martech businesses and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's been a real kind of hotbed, and for your point of view, introducing them to new technology must be quite exciting. And we're here, at this big digital show, a lot of technology on display. What do you think have been the key drivers of tech, particularly in the media space, over the last 12 months?
It's a good question. I think there's a couple of things going on. Firstly, we're seeing real adoption of data management platforms. Everybody's been talking about them for the last 5 years, but we're really seeing a big uptake of that sort of thing. They're just really useful. They're a strategic tool. They bring together a range of different data, which means that clients are able to sort of segment, target better, and that they're. Whereas most technologies tend to be tactical, these are really strategic. That's a big difference. They're also different from a lot of other technologies in that they're on all the time, whereas other technologies, they're switched on a campaign-by-campaign basis, like an ad server, DSP, and all of these things. And that means we have to be ready for that and change some of the ways we deploy tech. At the other end of the scale, we've got sales tech, so we've got beacons. And previously, offline media was often driving people to online stores. Now we're seeing the flip side of that, which is that online media can drive people to a physical store, wake up beacons, bring people into the store, they make a purchase in store, and we can retarget them with other messages on the way out. And that's a real difference, and that's why I think there's a lot more sales technologies here, as well as ad technologies, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And do you think, are there any brands that have really kind of captured that? I suppose from an e-commerce perspective, that's where it's really happening at the moment.
Yeah, it is without a doubt, a lot of them. There's a lot of the e-commerce retailers actually, but there's also, I suppose, some of the FMCG brands are experimenting with this sort of thing. We work with L'Oreal. I know Unilever do some of this stuff as well. So there is a lot of perhaps some of the clients which haven't necessarily been so involved with e-commerce who have been heavily into this because they rely so heavily on a physical store presence.
Yeah, and what are the biggest challenges to this being implemented? I mean, obviously education, I would imagine, is one. People slightly scared. How do you persuade those clients to kind of move into that space and go, actually, this would kind of potentially drive your awareness, drive sales?
Yeah, I think for clients, what they look for is proof points. They look for where it's been done before. Obviously, if it hasn't been done before, we need to show them very clear logistics of what we'll put in place to join things up. And there is a lot of integrations and joining up different pieces of technology. That tends to be the biggest challenge. And when you look at the Lumascape, you've got sort of 2,500 companies out there. There is a lot of integrations that are required in order to make them work extremely efficiently, fast, with little latency, and all of the things which are required to operationalize these opportunities at scale.
Yeah, and it really is a key challenge, isn't it, in kind of showing them that. And obviously ROI is such an important factor now in any campaign that goes ahead. Do you think we're at a stage where there's some sort of measurement scale so you can actually show this works like this or this works like that?
Yeah, I mean, measurement's definitely getting better. I mean, we've always been able to track, from the ad, the click through to the sale, but there's econometrics remains extremely strong for looking at on and offline together, and we know that one drives the other and vice versa, so that's important. But also attribution technologies for digital channels have got a world better in the last 12 months. So we're much more able to pick apart and see whether we should be investing as much in search relative to display and video. There are also cross-device technologies which are just so important, because 40% of actions start on one device and then the consumer completes them on another device. We have to be able to track somebody being exposed to an ad on their mobile and then completing on the desktop. So things like that are really important. And also for analysing the consumer journey across their devices, across the channels. That way we can tell all these brand stories across them. But also just we can do basics, like we can frequency control. The more you control frequency, the more you can drive effective reach. And again, this is basic media stuff. The technologies enable us to do stuff better.
And a very interesting point you make there about going across and tracking the consumer from a phone to maybe an iPad to a desktop. And I suppose the next thing from that is tracking when they're there, at what time and where they're doing it. How accurate are we at having that across the industry now? Are we close to being able to devise and see where those people are?
Yeah, the locational stuff's getting better and better. And there's a range of specialists here. There's a couple of I've got meetings with today. And knowing where someone is fantastically useful in the retail environment. It's also just useful knowing where someone has been.
Yes.
If someone's been in a first-class airport lounge, I can infer quite a lot of things about them, and that makes it targetable information. So it's not just the immediate stuff, but we have to obviously respect people's privacy. There's we don't know who they are, but where they've been, as well as where they are, both things vitally important.
And privacy is an interesting one, isn't it? Because I almost think, and I'm sure you've had the same thing, where your targeted ads, you may have purchased something and then suddenly you get 15 ads for the same thing you've just purchased, but you don't necessarily need that. The irony I find is actually if you gave them a bit more personal details, you'd probably have a kind of hyper-personalised message. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is, how difficult do you think it will be to persuade those consumers to give more of their personal stuff, ironically, which will give them a better personalised message?
Yeah, it's a good point. There's quite a few people who are experimenting with that, and there are different controls you can put in your browser, and I think a lot of it's about education. It is also about better technology, because being able to manage frequency is just so important. As you just said, you get 15 ads. You do not need 15 ads. If you can reduce that to 5 across the devices, that gives you much more firepower in terms of building extra reach. All of these things, are related. But we have to be very careful how we work within the privacy controls, and we're in Germany, where it's especially important. So we always respect these things.
As they have their own privacy czars here, I'm told, and in France as well.
Very much so. IP address counts as PII here, unlike in many other countries. It's especially tied here.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And I suppose one of the things that really frustrates in the industry, particularly from our point of view, because we have that kind of overview look and we can see all these wonderful technologies coming in place, these wonderful campaigns. I think the thing that's frustrating is sometimes it's the brands who aren't fully taking advantage of that technology, and they're still, I suppose, in a certain mindset. How do you kind of go about changing a brand mindset, I suppose, so to be up to date with the kind of evolving consumer? Because from an agency point of view, you guys are very good at doing that, but it's actually trying to convert those brands and how they're set up internally.
Yeah, again, it comes down to proof points, and proof points are data and experience of having done something before. And certainly our agency role is changed. And previously it's all about understanding the consumer and then the different means of reaching them through media, through placements, through creativity. We're also now becoming specifiers of technology, and so we have to have our own processes for doing that and implementing it on behalf of the brands. But all of it comes back to the data. What is the return? What are the proof points before we can implement something? And all the brands require that.
Wow. And it's interesting, we are in this data world, and 4 or 5 years ago I remember judging the awards on econometrics, and I remember everyone saying, data, big data, small data. Now actually data is finally, I think, at that point where it's driving creativity, it's driving technology, it's driving campaigns, and is that where we will see that happening further and further in the near future?
Yes, without a doubt, because more and more people are deploying data management platforms. They bring together more data from not just from media channels. There's on-site, there's CRM, there's email, there's the offline call center data. We can then augment that with additional third-party data, and there's a lot of very powerful data owners within these various halls. all of that means we have better intelligence. So we're going to see a lot more use of this data. And these data platforms are then linked to various different activation tools, so that they mean that we can buy the people we want, and it also means the other activation tools, which means we can show people the ad that's very personalized. Both of those two things together make for very compelling experiences, and we can tell these brand stories across the devices.
Absolutely, and I'm presuming also they are a huge driver in taking agencies to the next level. Obviously, over the last few years, everyone talks about, the media agency could be dying, the media agency could be dead, but actually data and technology are, if you're in the right spaces at the right times with both of those points, I'm thinking that's kind of the future for agencies.
We manage complexity. There's a lot of very successful companies here that do one or two things. Agencies manage a whole range of things and have to be neutral and make recommendations that are good for their clients. There is a very big difference. Some of the tech companies will take a certain business line. If it suits them, we have to deliver 360-degree communications for brands to consumers. It's very, very different. We're in the service business as well as the technology business.
And then I suppose one of the questions I wanted to ask is 2016, we've looked forward, we're into the year. What do we think is really going to be driving ad tech in 2016? Are there any key platforms you think that will drive, any key technology that will transform the way media is consumed and actually the way campaigns are delivered?
Yeah, I think, I've talked about data management platforms. That will continue to go. Similarly, sales technology with the in-store physical beacon stuff. So that'll all be going very hard. Technology will be better joined up. There'll be more integrations. Right. Joining up two pieces of technology is hard. You can have a lot of data loss, so technology will get better with that. We've also got 2,500 odd companies on the Lumascape. There will be a reduction, and I wish everybody well with it, but there will be some reduction and some consolidation. So I think 2016 could be quite a watershed year on that basis.
That is a very exciting place. Well, I wish you luck, Damian. You're in an exciting, challenging and moving space, which is always good. But thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, my friend.